There are moments in public life that don't just trend, they reveal something deeper, something uncomfortable, something people in power would rather keep hidden. And right now, what we are witnessing with Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex in Australia is one of those moments. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. They left, they stepped away. They built a life outside the institution. And according to a certain class of royal commentators, that was supposed to be the end of the story. The curtain call, the quiet fade into irrelevance. But instead, the opposite happened. As Harry and Meghan moved through Australia meeting veterans, speaking to young people, connecting with communities, showing up at Bondi, drawing crowds across Sydney, something shifted. Not just in public reaction, but in media tone, in energy, in control. Because suddenly the narrative wasn't being dictated from palace briefings. It was being shaped in real time by people. And the response? Warm, organic, unforced. The kind of attention you cannot manufacture, no matter how many press offices you employ or how many protocols you enforce. And that is where the problem began. Because almost immediately, Britain's royal commentariat started to wobble. Not gently, not subtly, but loudly, visibly and repeatedly. Figures like Robert Jobson went on air, not to analyse, but to react, to complain, to warn, to suggest that somehow a private visit by two individuals had the power to muddy the waters of the monarchy itself. Think about that for a second. Two privately funded individuals destabilising a centuries-old institution? If that sounds exaggerated, it's because it is. But exaggeration is the point, because what we are really seeing here is not concern, it's discomfort. And that discomfort comes from something very simple. Harry and Meghan are still connecting, and they're doing it without permission. Now, let's break this down. For 6 years, 6 long years, the same narrative has been recycled. You've heard it. We've all heard it. They're irrelevant. They're desperate. They're embarrassing. They're over. And yet, every time they step out into the world, those claims collapse under the weight of reality. Australia was just the latest example. Crowds didn't just show up, they waited, they gathered in numbers, they leaned in, they engaged, not out of obligation, not out of tradition, but out of genuine interest. And here's where things get even more revealing. Because instead of acknowledging that reality, the media playbook kicked in again. Same script, different day. Suddenly the conversation shifted to taxpayer money, to security costs, to crowd control, as if public safety at a well-attended event is some kind of scandal rather than standard procedure. But let's be clear, Harry and Meghan fund their own security. They are not drawing from the sovereign grant, they are not operating as working royals. That was settled years ago. And yet the narrative persists. Why? Because when the facts don't work, you repeat the framing. Then came the quasi-royal argument. Panels on major outlets began asking, how should people see them? Are they royals? Are they something else? But here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud. The public already answered that question. They see them as human, approachable, relatable, engaged. And that doesn't fit neatly into a hierarchy that relies on distance, formality, and tradition to maintain its mystique. Then there's the commercialism criticism. And honestly, this one might be the most transparent of all. Because when Meghan wears something and it sells out, it becomes a problem, a scandal, a talking point. But when the same thing happens for other royals, it's celebrated. It's branding, it's influence, it's power. So what's the difference? It's not the action, it's the person, and people are starting to notice. Now zoom out for a moment. Because while all of this is happening, while Harry and Meghan are out there engaging, connecting, showing up what's happening on the other side, the official monarchy continues its carefully managed schedule. Structured appearances, scripted speeches, controlled environments, everything polished, everything precise, everything distant. And then Harry and Meghan walk into the same space and suddenly it feels different, more relaxed, more natural, more alive. Meghan telling people to call her Meg. Harry joking with locals, reconnecting with veterans, stepping into conversations without barriers, no stiffness, no performance, just presence. And that contrast? It's impossible to ignore. Even local coverage in Australia reflected it. Segments showed Meghan holding babies at Bondi, Harry spending time with Invictus veterans, crowds reacting not with obligation, but with joy. One moment in particular stood out. A woman named Michelle Haywood received a hug from Harry, connecting through a shared memory involving her late mother. That's not choreography. That's connection, and it's something you can't fake. Now ask yourself this. If the monarchy is built on public connection, what happens when someone outside of it does that more effectively? That's the real question underneath all the noise. And it's the question commentators don't want to answer. Because answering it honestly would mean admitting something uncomfortable, that the institution is not being challenged by rebellion, but by comparison. Now, let's talk about the media obsession, because this is where things get almost surreal. For years, outlets have claimed they want Harry and Meghan to disappear, to go away, to stop dominating headlines. And yet they cover everything, every move, every appearance, every trip. This Australia visit, covered like a full royal tour. Same commentators, same talking points, same urgency. So which is it? Are they irrelevant or are they essential content? Because it cannot be both. And the truth is, the media has made them central by refusing to let them go. Now, let's bring in something important that often gets ignored. The 2020 agreement, the Sandringham Summit outcome. It clearly stated that Harry and Meghan would step back as working royals, become privately funded, and pursue independent charitable and commercial work. That's exactly what they're doing. Not bending the rules, not breaking the system, following the agreement. So when commentators suggest otherwise, it raises a simple question. Is this about principle or perception? Because if it were about principle, the facts would matter. But if it's about perception, then repeating the same narrative, regardless of accuracy, becomes the strategy. And that brings us to something deeper. Because beyond the headlines, beyond the commentary, beyond the outrage cycles, there's a human story here. A woman who entered one of the most scrutinized institutions in the world and refused to lose herself inside it. Meghan Sussex didn't follow the expected script. She didn't shrink. She didn't stay silent. She didn't accept being reduced to a role. She stepped away and built something new. And for some people, that is the real issue. Because it challenges a system that depends on compliance. It disrupts expectations. It rewrites the ending. And when someone rewrites the ending, especially in a space that rarely allows it, the reaction is rarely calm. That's why the criticism feels so intense. That's why it keeps repeating. Because this isn't just about Harry and Meghan, it's about what they represent. Choice, reinvention, and maybe, most of all, freedom. Meanwhile, Harry continues to do what he's always done, champion veterans, support mental health, show up in spaces that matter. Not because of obligation, but because of purpose. And when you see that, when you see both of them operating with that kind of clarity, the noise starts to sound exactly like what it is. Not concern, not principle, but reaction. So here we are, another trip, another wave of criticism, another round of headlines, and yet the pattern remains the same. The more successful Harry and Meghan are in connecting with people, the louder the backlash becomes. The warmer the public response, the colder the commentary. The more natural their presence feels, the more forced the criticism sounds. And at some point you have to ask, if the institution is so strong, why does this keep happening? Why does a couple living independently, funding their own work and connecting with people on their own terms trigger this level of reaction? Because strong systems don't react like this. Confident systems don't scramble. Stable institutions don't feel threatened by comparison. So maybe the real story here isn't about disruption. It's about exposure. Exposure of the gap between image and reality, between tradition and relevance, between performance and authenticity. And right now, Harry and Meghan are standing right in that gap without trying to, just by being themselves. And that might be the most powerful thing of all. So what do you think? Is this just another media cycle, or are we watching something bigger unfold right in front of us? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand on this. And if you enjoy deep dives like this, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and tap that super thanks button if you want to support the channel. It really helps keep conversations like this going. Because one thing is clear, they may have left the institution, but they never left the spotlight. And maybe they never needed it in the first place.